You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains. Sponsored by Capital Mortgage Services.
Welcome back. Here's a look at some of the political headlines of the past week. Texas Board of Regents voting to begin the next phase of design on the Amarillo Veterinary School project. Cost of those engineering services and scheduling will be about $7 million. The classroom and research area will be on the Health Sciences Center campus in Amarillo. A secondary stockyard and animal clinic facility will be built off campus. U.S. Supreme Court wrapping up its session with a pair of decisions that a lot of folks in Texas have been watching for. The court boarding 5-4 that federal courts have no role in policing partisan redistricting. Chief Justice John Roberts saying there's no way to properly test and decide whether district lines have been drawn for partisan reasons, and that, quote, voters and elected officials should decide this political dispute, not the courts. Also, the court blocked the addition of this question of citizenship to the 2020 census, for now at least, saying the Commerce Department's explanation for why the question was necessary was insufficient. U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce Dr. John Fleming joining Mayor Pope and experts from the Departments of Agriculture and Housing and Urban Development in Lubbock this week, talking about the creation of what's called opportunity zones here. Those were created as part of the 2017 tax cuts. It allows businesses to defer or eliminate taxes by instead investing into an opportunity zone fund to promote business development and the development of skilled workers to run them. We're told that's coming to Lubbock very soon. This week's debates by Democratic presidential candidates reminded me that amid all the meticulously researched and memorized speeches at well-lit and well-choreographed events, we don't get to see enough of them as just regular people. Eric Draper was able to do that. He was George W. Bush's chief White House photographer and special advisor for his 8 years in office. Draper was in town for a scholarship fundraiser benefiting photography students, and I spoke with him for 5 good minutes.
Well, I got a call from Chris Duncan with the West Texas Press Photographers Network there, and he told me about this event and thought I would be a good fit, and so here I am. This was months ago, and so I've been looking forward to this event and sharing my stories and photos and selling my book.
Yeah, sure. Hey, well, let's talk about your career a little bit, because you know, you're obviously a photographer at the White House and everything that went along with that, but you've kind of been all around the world with AP in different places before you even got to the White House, right?
That's right, yeah. I spent about 8 years as a newspaper photographer, working for the Seattle Times, Pasadena Star-News in California, and then the Albuquerque Tribune. And then I joined the Associated Press in 2000. No, actually 1996. And the AP is worldwide, and I traveled all around the world covering events from world disasters to the biggest sporting events, from the Olympics, World Cup, to civil unrest in foreign countries.
Sure.
I did it all.
Is it the kind of glamorous life that you would hope it would be to all the rest of the world landlocked here in Lubbock?
I wouldn't call it glamorous. It's definitely very interesting and very fascinating to experience the world and world events and see things, amazing things, and document them for people to see. So
tell me now about how does one become a White House photographer?
Well, every White House photographer has their path to becoming the photographer, and in my case, being a press photographer, I was assigned by the Associated Press to be the campaign photographer for the Bush campaign. This is, going back to late 1999 when he announced, and so I was the lead photographer on the campaign, and never ever thinking about becoming, going into the White House. I was, pretty happy doing what I was doing, and it wasn't until after the election, because you might remember back then, in 2000, the election was not decided that night. Right. And so during that time period, I was just curious about who might have been picked. And the more I inquired, the more I realized I had a shot at this position. And then I had the opportunity to actually walk up and ask President-elect Bush. It was perfect timing. I'll walk up and ask him for the job. And this has happened inside the governor's mansion in Texas, where he invited press and staff to a Christmas party, and I said, well, I've got to make my personal pitch, and I walked up to him and I said, I want to thank you for inviting us to the party. I want to be your personal photographer. And he looked at me like he never thought about it before. And he said, I really appreciate that. I'll get back to you. And so a week later, I'm back in Austin, Texas, sitting in front of Andy Card, interviewing for the job. And what I really didn't realize at the time was they knew my work and my personality, so they knew I could fit in. What I didn't know was what it would be like to work, directly for a president. So.
Well, did you have some preconceived notions about Mr. Bush before just the campaign, and did that change at all when you got to the White House?
What I didn't realize is how little I knew about him as a journalist. And it wasn't until working for him I realized what type of person he was, how principled and how dedicated he is to his health, to his job, to his family, a very well-rounded person, and a lot of fun to hang around as well. So the 8 years was a blast to be around someone like that who's a real people person. And, of course, being there for such history made it very fascinating, and so I stuck around for all 8 years to tell that story.
The next question, I guess, that everyone would want to know is, where were you on 9/11 and all that?
Well, I was with President Bush at the school in Sarasota, Florida that morning, and so I learned, as he did, and we knew about, the first plane, which we all thought was a small plane. It was an accident,
right.
And then unfortunately, we learned about the second plane, and we knew that that America was under attack. And yeah, it was just a nightmare that day in terms of how bad it got, in terms of the Pentagon getting hit, and then the Flight 93 still airborne in Pennsylvania, and all that was all happening all at the same time.
And then with all that going on, you still feel that same, I need to document all of this.
Well, lucky for me, I had a camera to keep me distracted. I had a camera to hide my tears at times, or to distract me, and that's what a lot of people ask that question, is like, what did you think at the time? And everyone on that plane that day just did their jobs. It was crystal clear what everyone had to do. Everyone focused on their jobs, and I focused on documenting the president.
And then after that, here you are, named as a personal assistant. Now, how does this transition happen? Well,
through the years, when you're in that small bubble, the entourage that's around the president, a lot of times you get perks of the job, and so after a few years, I was named special assistant to the president, which meant I was a commissioned officer, and so you get a few perks, like you can eat in the White House mess, and
nice.
But the best perk was West Wing parking.
Hey, parking anywhere, especially big city D.C. Forget it. That's the best thing. Got to be the best thing ever. And then that comes to an end. Now, tell me what happens. What do you do for an encore after something like that?
Well, it's hard to top. Yeah, I can say. And luckily for me, the contacts I've made through the years and all the connections have led to lots of work, lots of freelance work. So I've started my own business, working from clients, mostly corporate events, and it's been good. It's been really good.
Tell me about the book too. Where do we find it, and then what's all of that about?
Well, the book, it's called Front Row Seat. It's available on Amazon. It's available. UT Press published the book in Austin, and it's still out there. It's been out there for the last 5 years, and it's still selling.
Yeah, and if we want to find your work, and maybe, I don't know, the corporate heads out there want to hire you out, how hard is it to get a hold of you?
Of course, it's very easy. I have a website, ericdraperphotography.com. There is another Eric Draper who is a photographer, so if you see any mountain climbing or skateboarding photos, that's not me.
That's not you?
No.
You're the guy who does it. That's
exactly.
Good stuff. Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks so much for
Great.
For doing
Thank
this.
you.